So today is when I discuss a less happier time during the Marvel Ultimate Comics era, a time when everything was just starting to ramp up into multiple comic runs. We even had a few successful mini spawn out of those major comics like Ultimates, Ultimate X-Men, and Ultimate Spider-Man. But as I stated in my last video, a certain writer by the name of Joseph Loeb came on the scene and it was not good. To say that Loeb's stint on the Ultimate Universe, which mostly just consisted of two major storylines, was damaging would be underselling what actually happened. It all started in 2007 when Loeb took over the Ultimates title from Mark Millar and decided to try to keep that big blockbuster, over the top, and zany storyline that you got from Millar previously. Except Loeb went beyond that and made a nonsensical, even more sexist, and decided to add some incest storylines in there. No one asked for this, and no one should be subjected to this. But you're wondering, was it really that bad? Well, let's get a little deeper into these two storylines. The very first page of Ultimates 3 starts with leaked footage of Tony Stark's sex tape. Because what better way to start a superhero tale, of the greatest team on Earth, than to talk about a drunk Tony and his sex tapes and selling them on DVD? If that's not bad enough, we have totally out of whack characters, Hawkeye acting enraged despite him trying to self-heal after the events of Ultimates 2 in which he lost his family. Instead of that path at the end, we get this angry angst version of Hawkeye that no one can stand, cursing at everyone including his friends, and I guess you could call them friends, though everybody in here is an asshole, so I don't know, maybe Hawkeye has a point. But listen, we can't get too comfortable because soon Venom just burst in demanding to speak to her. And I put her in quotations because we don't know who she is until much later and it still doesn't make any sense. Anyway, the rest of the issue is extremely uneasy and uncomfortable as Janet explains to Steve after Steve and Quicksilver get into an argument over Scarlet Witch's costume. Yes, because we have to make sure everybody knows that Cap does not like the fact that she has a revealing clothing. Why? I don't know. It just had to be done. But in that case, Janet then explains that Quicksilver is in love with Scarlet Witch, his sister. Like, yikes, but it only gets worse here on out. We have major characters like Black Panther getting beat by the likes of someone like Venom, Janet just yelling at everybody. Thor was a horny god trying to fuck a 9-year-old as much as he can, which might be probably the most normal thing this book has to give off, and it still comes off sleazy. You got Wolverine just showing up because, well, he's Wolverine and he sells. You have a cameo from Spider-Man, which was like the most unnecessary 7 or 8 pages I read, and you have almost everyone more unlikable in this than they were in Ultimates 1 and 2, which is pretty high up there because a lot of people hate those and they are unlikable in that. But my god, at least they got shit done in those comics. In this, they don't get anything done. In this, they're just fighting amongst themselves most of the time, and there isn't even a Hulk to cause them to fight. So what the hell is happening? Later on, Quicksilver goes to his father after his sister is shot and presumed dead. His father then decides to strike at the Ultimates. This causes a new brotherhood to form because, oh my god, we need another brotherhood. Yay. The fights make no sense here. Characters getting beat when they shouldn't. There's a few extremely uncomfortable scenes. One where Valkyrie almost gets raped by Pyro. I mean, like, why? Why? And why is Quicksilver betraying everybody after getting shot in the knees by his father? And then he's like, yeah, we're cool, Pops, because, your daughter died, who you also treated like shit, but I'm going to trust your judgment. You just have some weird, odd choices here, like showing the sex scene from Wolverine's point of view and Wolverine watching Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch do it. I mean, why? I know I keep asking that question, but why? That's a real big why on that one. Listen, I know I'm jumping around because this book is literally only 5 issues, but it is insanity, and it is god-awful, and it ruins so many characterizations of multiple characters so far. Millar's run was very tongue-in-cheek, and he knew what he was going for. Loeb just made everyone an asshole just to make him an asshole. They're also sleazy, sexist, and just disgusting, which I don't know why you would double down on the bad traits that we got from the other ones, but here we are. But what if I told you this was only the prelude to the main event that shook the very universe to the core, the one that would ultimately ruin it forever? Well, that's because next up is Ultimatum, something far, far worse. So Ultimatum was the event that followed Ultimates 3. Magneto now had the power of the hammer from Thor because he somehow beat Thor. Don't ask me. So what can he do? Well, he creates a tidal wave that takes out New York City. And you know what? The idea isn't horrible. To actually have a huge natural disaster, well, maybe not natural, but a disaster happen where heroes are caught off guard and actually can't do much. I liked it. It kind of reminded me of Catalysm in Batman when the earthquake happened, so this can be used to great effect to make something new and interesting. But of course, it didn't turn out that way. After the initial tidal wave happens, Sue uses her force field to push the waters back, leaving her brain dead. That's right, one of the major characters of the Marvel Universe is now dead. In doing so, we begin to learn the fate of plenty of other characters who were caught up in the wave. Now, there are certain characters I actually expected to die, and even makes sense that they died the way they did. But then you have absolutely some of the dumbest deaths I think I've ever seen in my entire life of reading comics. The very fact that Nightcrawler, if you don't know who that is, he's a teleporter, couldn't teleport, I don't know, up into the sky. Makes no friggin' sense to me. Killing off other major characters like Johnny Storm when they are inside the Baxter building, and odds are that to get the water inside the building and would have had to broke through windows, yet he's drowning inside the Baxter building instead of like flushing him out of the building, and then he could have just used his fire to go up. And if you think too hard, it's just gonna hurt your head. And honestly, this is the least offensive thing this series does. That's right, guys. We're about to get a little bit deeper into this monstrosity. After we learn the fate of a few characters, we're thrown into basically rescue mode. Hank all of a sudden wants to find Janet, despite him, being an abusive and near murdering person or partner to her previously. He wants to now save her, and Clint decides, well, let me help you out, guy. When they go looking for her, they stumble upon the Blob. Now, you guys know the Blob. He's that big fat dude who eats too much and is on the Brotherhood most of the time. Well, he's eating Janet, and yes, I mean eating her stomach. I mean, just look at this. I mean, I don't know why this is happening. That's my problem. This shouldn't happen. This is just shock factor to be shock factor. To put the topper on the cake, Hank decides to pick up the Blob, look him in the eyes, and then bite his fucking head off and spit his head to the ground because Edge, baby, Edge, we need more Edge in our life. And then we have just really odd deaths, like Magneto just being a super prick and snapping Xavier's neck because, well, why not? He's just turned super evil, which didn't really align with the rest of the Ultimate X-Men run, in my opinion. Spider-Man working with the Hulk for a second, and then bam, blowing up, and we assume that Spider's dead, but we know that Spidey's not going to die from that, so we focus too much time on wondering if he's alive or not. Doesn't make sense, because we know he's not. And then we have amazing deaths, like Angel coming in to stop Magneto, but instead he gets stomped out by Sabretooth of all fucking mutants. So yeah, that was cool. And then Wolverine gets, what? Just look at this page. It's so ridiculous what happens to some of the major heroes and how they die. But we don't stop there, as Magneto eventually gets beaten, and then we flip 8 days later, and maybe we get some relief, some calming down, talk to the people. Nope, bam! Scott Summers gets shot right through the head. The leader of the X-Men gets shot through the head. Yeah. Listen, this book is extremely mean-spirited and vile, and one of the edgiest, darkest, most pointless books I've ever read. If you wanted to wipe the slate clean for the Ultimate Universe, you could do this in a much more tasteful way than, well, this. Now listen, I know at the time of writing this, Loeb wasn't in a good place. Sadly, his son, who was 17, passed away from cancer only about a year before this, or 2 years. And I can only imagine now, as a father, how hard this is to get through. Probably never getting over such a traumatic event. And these are comic books. These are fictional characters. And of course, a real loss is far worse than any bad event. It just feels like Loeb wasn't in a good space, and he took his anger and frustration and lost out on these 2 books and ruined something that was special to a lot of people. Now, I'm always going to feel bad for saying that Loeb ruined a big part of my childhood because he lost a child, and nothing can replace that. Not any character or event. So let me make that clear. But separating his actual life events with his work took such a heavy nosedive that it actually began to destroy an entire universe, and we call that the Ultimate Universe. Now, it's not to say that he's the only cause. Let me backtrack a little. Kirkman was getting a lot of flack from Marvel at this point. From interviews, I can gather that they were not agreeing on a lot of things, and him not agreeing with them forced character plot lines, and his Ultimate X-Men run suffered from it. Maybe Marvel should have been smart and just let the creator of, I don't know, one of the most widely successful indie comics of all time called Walking Dead, and one of the greatest superhero comics of all time, Invincible, write the damn X-Men comic in his vision, and we would have gotten something really special instead of the rehashes with little to add to the universe, which was happening during the Ultimate 3 and Ultimatum time period. Mike Carey was working on Fantastic Four, and honestly, he is not a bad writer, but he brought nothing to the table with Fantastic Four. And even though I'm not a huge fan of the series in general, something about Millar and Bendis' run for the first 30 issues resonated and had fun with the characters, and fans enjoyed it. But Carey's run did none of that, and it's not really remembered at all, and nobody ever brings it up, and that's just kind of sad that it was forgotten. So to wrap it up, after two horrible events, some of the worst of all time that I've ever read, and two runs suffering being Ultimate X-Men and Ultimate Fantastic Four, flagship titles for this universe, Ultimate Spider-Man was basically the only thing holding up. So after Ultimatum, Marvel tried to do basically a reset, and now they're going to bring in some major writers and artists and try to repair the damage that was done. So for that, we're going to stop here. And in the next video, we are going to finish up this 3-part series with Marvel Ultimate Comics Part 3, The End. I hope you guys are enjoying this series. If you haven't checked out Part 1, go do that. It's called The Rise. This is called The Fall. And the last part will be called The End. And I really hope you guys enjoy this. This is a ton of fun to go back in time, even though this was horrible to reread Ultimates 3 and Ultimatum again. But I did it for you guys because I love you. And I can't wait to do more. If you guys have any suggestions on events, storylines, characters that you really like, post them below. I always love to tackle them, and maybe ones that I already wanted to do and now I feel obligated to since you post them. So put those below, and remember to like. As always, that means a lot to me. It means that you enjoy these videos. Subscribe if you want to share these. That's amazing, and I'll see you guys in the final part of the Ultimatum. No, just kidding. Ultimate Comics Universe. Ultimatum is something we should forget, but we never can. Oh, sad.